Today I'm going to be going over the 7 most common mistakes I see when making your Ikonart custom stencils. Let's go.
So the first mistake I see people make is that they forget to adjust their printer settings. This is very important. No matter what program you are using to print out of, make sure you adjust your printer settings. I'm going to show you exactly how I do it out of VECTR. This is an online editing program and we have a lot of tutorials on how to use VECTR. So check out our playlist linked below. But basically, once you have your artwork set up the way you want, and always make sure that it is 100% black. So I'm just selecting all my artwork and going over here and making sure that it does say 100% black. And if I go to CMYK, I can see 000 100, and that's exactly what I want. So then once I'm ready to print, I just go to this export button and right now this all looks good. So I'll just click print and it'll bring up this dialog box. All right, so it'll bring up this dialog box and I always go to more settings and that all is looking good. And then I'm just gonna go to print using system dialog box. And then that will bring up your extra settings for your printer. So I'm just going to make sure I have the printer selected. I'm printing on my Canon Pixma IX6820. And I have, preferences saved here, but all I did was under my options here, I selected the paper that I want and I did test all of these and I made sure which one printed the darkest. So this Paper Pro Platinum option gave me the most options, and that was when I select print quality, go to set. It was the only paper option that let me have the highest print quality right here. So I'm going to click OK, and then under color and intensity, I also went in and manually adjusted this so that my brightness was set to dark, my intensity all the way to dark, and my contrast all the way to dark. And then grayscale printing is fine, and that's it. So I'm printing on 8.5 by 11. That all looks good. So when you adjust those print settings, what it does is it lays down as much ink as possible when printing. So your printer should be printing pretty slow. It shouldn't just shoot out the paper, and you will see that in a second here. So I'm just gonna click OK, make sure my printer is turned on, and click print. So as you can see, this is printing pretty slowly, but it is laying down a lot of ink, so the artwork looks nice and dark. And if you hold up your art to a light source, you should not be able to see through the printed artwork. It should be nice and opaque.
The second mistake I see when making Ikonart stencils is forgetting to rub down the cover sheet.
So when making your Ikonart stencil, you don't want there to be a gap between your artwork and your stencil film. You don't want there to be any air between that, otherwise light can get under your artwork during exposure. So in order to avoid that, we have a clear cover sheet and we just rub down really well. And this will help avoid any gap between your artwork and your stencil film.
The third mistake I see when making Ikonart stencils is exposure time. We recommend 35 seconds for our inkjet film and 30 seconds for our laser printer film. You may see a few people in our Facebook group talk about exposing less time. That's usually if their artwork didn't print dark enough or if they have super fine details, but there's no reason to ever expose more than that. If you expose longer than 35 seconds, you risk the light going through your artwork and hardening that film underneath your artwork. It makes washout really, really difficult. So definitely follow the recommended exposure times. I printed on inkjet printer film, so I am going to expose the stencil for 35 seconds. The fourth mistake I see when making Ikonart stencils is lighting. As you can see, I am working in regular lighting right now. I'm not working in the dark. However, I'm not working in front of a bright window that's letting UV light in, and I am working quickly. I'm not just letting my film sit out. Until the film is completely washed out and post-exposed, it is light sensitive. So if you expose your stencil and then you're washing out in front of a window or a bright UV light, that will continue to expose the film and harden the areas of the film that you're trying to wash out. So definitely if you're in front of a kitchen window washing out or bathroom or something like that, pull the shade or work when the sun sets. And the fifth mistake I see people make is not soaking their stencil first. So I just put a little bit of warm water in my sink. You don't need much. And then I take my clipboard and just put it over the top to protect it from any light. Because again, I don't want it to keep exposing while it's soaking. And then I just soak it in that warm water for about a minute. And that will really help to soften that coating on the stencil and make washout a whole lot faster. You don't want to soak for too long, because if you do, then you can start to break down the stencil, but I found a minute to be a pretty good sweet spot. The sixth mistake I see made when making Ikonart stencils is the way the stencils are washed out. So both the water temperature and your water pressure are very important when washing out your Ikonart stencils. You don't want to use cold water. Cold water will just not soften the coating on the stencil film enough. It will take forever to wash out your stencil, so we really do recommend warm water to wash out your stencils. And then for pressure, you want a nice solid pressure to be able to clean out that stencil. We of course use our trigger jet nozzle here at the office, but when I'm at home I do just use my regular kitchen sink sprayer, and that's fine. If you are finding that you don't have enough pressure with your kitchen sink sprayer, then there are attachments you can buy on Amazon to increase that water pressure that are really helpful. We also have some people who use a water pick who don't have enough pressure, but yeah, the water pressure and the water temperature are both very important when making your stencils. And when you follow those tips, you'll be able to hold these really fine details. This looks great. And washout really shouldn't take you longer than about a minute. Of course, depending on your artwork. The seventh most common mistake I see made when making Ikonart stencils is forgetting to post-expose. I personally forget this all the time. It's a very easy step to forget, but it's also very important. When you post-expose your stencil, you are finishing hardening or curing the emulsion or the coating on your stencil, so you're making it much more durable. So all you do to post-expose is put it back under the light and turn on the light for another 2 minutes. If washout took you a really long time, then you can post-expose both sides for 2 minutes, or if you're having problems with your stencils breaking down for some reason, then try post-exposing 2 minutes on each side. I always just do 2 minutes on the top side, but it really helps to make that stencil last a lot longer and to protect the adhesive side too. So those are the 7 most common mistakes I see when making Ikonart stencils. If you have any questions about making your own reusable stencils, let me know in the comments. My name is Fawn, and I share tips and tricks on how to make and use Ikonart stencils. If you want more information on how to create the artwork for your stencils, check out this playlist here. And if you want to see more videos like this, make sure to subscribe.